people have gone through a period like this before. And so I'm going to point out some principles that are at work within the current collective consciousness so that we can use this time for the great unmasking. Now, some of you have been following my CWR Live broadcasts for the last few weeks when I began talking about healing the galactic virus. I talked about this 4 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, or 4 broadcasts ago and 3 broadcasts ago. I talked about the galactic virus as a state of artificiality and self-abandonment that set in especially strongly around the time of the Industrial Revolution. And I talked about how that phenomenon of human beings taught to doubt their own true nature and instead compare themselves to other people in other parts of the world and accept false standards of conditioning became more and more prevalent, especially at the time of the Industrial Revolution, and even more so during the current rise of co-opted mainstream media. And today's mainstream media is largely co-opted by medical cartels that pay the lion's share of advertising for TV and newspapers. So you're never gonna find an anti-vaccine story on the Rachel Maddow MSNBC TV show, because she gets paid $7 million a year to sponsor Big Pharmacy, who sponsors her show. And you're never going to see anti-vaccine ads appear in the New York Times for the same reason. So the idea that that these outside sources are telling you the truth is crumbling now, is disintegrating, because more and more people are coming to mistrust what the media tells them and start to look closer in to what their own inner nature is saying and the inner nature of people that they trust. So one of the phenomenons that's occurring right now, consistent with the coronavirus period that we're going through, is the taking back of the power to control the narrative. And this is key, because whoever controls the narrative is affecting millions and billions of the way of people, the way that they see things. If the narrative says that the world is in bad peril from a bad virus, and we need a good guy like Bill Gates to create a vaccine, and the cowboys will ride in with the white hats and the bad guys with the black hats will be defeated, and we'll all ride happily ever after into the sunset, that's a much different narrative than the narrative that vaccines are problematic at best. And some of us, like myself, have been researching vaccines for almost 20 years and know their checkered history. And in fact, the medical cartels that produce vaccines, the pharmaceutical industry, is the chief defrauder of the federal government. More vaccine makers, more pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson have been taken to federal court for lying about their products over and over again and defrauding the federal government. So I don't know about you, but the main people who are lying to the government are not the people I wish to trust for the safety of my family. And so whoever controls the narrative controls tremendous power and influence. And one of the best things that's happening right now all around the world is that the power of controlling the narrative is being taken back by possibly millions of individuals from those institutions that they formerly invested that power with. People have invested power into TV shows, Rachel Maddow, governments, news broadcasters, institutions like the New York Times and the Washington Post. And one of the double ironies of our time is the right-wing Republican Trump lovers irony, where whenever Trump and many Trump lovers stumble into a truth that they don't like, they call it fake news. This has been on the rise now for years. You get Trump and probably most of his supporters, when they come upon any truth they don't like, they label it fake news. But I say that this is a double irony because the news also really is fake to a large part. It's not just those items that right-wing Republicans don't like, that's phony. It's the whole story of the current presidential primary election in this country has been co-opted by corporate media. The U.S. has become a banana republic, and the banana republics over the last 100 years that our intelligence agencies like the CIA stopped from getting democratic leaders and instead installed puppet leaders that were more friendly to US corporate interests is now being done on our own country. Those of you who've studied the 100-year war that the CIA has waged against democracy from being able to happen all around the rest of the world will understand that those same things they learned, the same things the intelligence community learned about how to manufacture consent in other countries are being done to our country now, are being done to our citizens now. This is what Edward Snowden tried to tell the world. This is what Chelsea Manning tried to tell the world. This is what Julian Assange tried to tell the world and is now being tortured for. So during this great unmasking, there are two dominant responses to it. Well, if we can't trust the media, not just for the Trump reasons of, like the flat earthers who just know for sure that the earth isn't round, and anything that comes out about the round earth is fake news. I'm saying it's a double irony because Trump was also correct when he calls the media fake news. He's actually right, though not for the reasons that he's doing it for. And that's the double irony of our time. We have to get past surface thinking, superficial good guys and bad guys, black and white thinking, to get down into the reality of what's happening now, not just the dominant media narratives. This is one of the greatest things going on now, is the dominant media narrative is falling apart. And more people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are waking up to realize that there's another story than the main stories of our time. The main stories of our time have become bogus, bankrupt, obsolete, deadly, suicidal, destructive, and that's getting unmasked. And out of the two main responses to this unmasking, there are those of us who take heart, take courage, take faith. Finally, at last, the sick illusion is disintegrating. finally, this great masquerade that I broke down in the last 3 weeks of Cosmic Weather Reports, the great costume party where people got hoodwinked into betraying their true nature and putting on a mask and a costume in childhood, and then forgetting that they were wearing one and keeping the mask and costume on through their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and so forth. Yay, finally, the great masquerade is disintegrating. The emperor has no clothes. The media is a lapdog rather than a watchdog of the government. Originally, the media was created to be a watchdog for the government. We still had that in the 1970s when Woodward and Bernstein brought down Nixon during the Watergate scandals. You were still allowed in those days, when the Washington Post had different ownership than it does now, which is Jeff Bezos of Amazon infamy. When the Washington Post had different owners, you still could get investigative journalism, investigative reporting. That changed during the Reagan administration, and there's a book about it called On Bended Knee, that the author of the book interviewed the main players in the Reagan administration who bragged to the author of how they'd stolen democracy by getting the main news sources in this country to receive spoon-fed news stories from the White House every day and forget about investigative journalism, forget about being a watchdog, and became a lapdog. This began in the 1970s, post-Watergate, the co-opting of mainstream media in this country. So, as I say, there are two main responses to this great unmasking, which is those who feel encouraged by the breakup of the illusion of the masquerade and are willing to begin claiming their own authority to develop a new narrative. And those people who are scared to death because they just want mommy and daddy to keep taking care of them and they don't want to grow up. And mommy and daddy have become toxic, and mommy and daddy have become assassins of true nature. So those of us who are willing to grow up and recognize that the system that was in place prior to the presidential primaries of 2020 and coronavirus was rotten, sick, diseased, and needed to expire. We're taking courage, and there's always some blend right now in human individuals between the parts of you that are absolutely freaking out and the parts of you that are absolutely ecstatic at the death of what never worked right in the first place. You are to be, it's understandable that parts of you are freaking out. Parts of me are freaking out. And it takes a lot to get me to freak out. But parts of me are freaking out. And especially the part of me that is the father of an 11-year-old boy and a 16-year-old boy, because this is their world. You know, sooner or later, this is going to become less and less of my world and more of their world. And so I am freaking out. The father in me is freaking out, and the father in me is ecstatic that the crumbling of the illusion is finally at hand. The revolution that we talked about as we passed joints in the 1960s and the 1970s is here. There is no more old way to be artificially secure. This is the death of artificial security. And what that ushers in is a period that can feel incredibly insecure. You are to be understood. You are to have empathy if you're going through a period of no security. If you're feeling insecure, it's perfectly understandable that you are. And your part in the great unmasking of our time, which I've been connecting to the conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto, we might as well consider the whole year to be the year of Jupiter conjunct Pluto, because Jupiter conjuncts Pluto in April, in June and November, and that event is so mighty and all pervasive that it's just going on. It's always going on, whether the two planets are right next to each other or a little bit away from each other. It's all year. It's not just these 3 times. One of the mistakes certain astrologers make is thinking that a thing only happens exactly at the moment that its outer planet, that its outer picture is happening. That's like saying that two human beings who are intimately connected are only linked when they're right next to each other. It's just not true. You know that. Anybody that you're significantly, intimately connected with, you're not only connected with when they're 1 inch away from your body, you're always connected to them. And so this year we are always connected to Jupiter and Pluto. And so the great unmasking is going on every minute of every day. And then it's up to you how much grace and faith you bring to that unmasking. Because it's similar to the grace and faith that need to be brought to the occurrence of somebody who's dying. Many of you have been close to somebody who died. You might even now be close to somebody who's dying. In fact, someday you're going to die. And so around death, around people that are dying, a lot of people get even more locked into their costumes and masks. Oh, we have to keep all the truth away from this person who's dying. This poor person is dying. And the last thing we can do is let them know that they're dying and give them the medical reports, because we must buffer them from reality, because that's what we were taught by our parents who buffered us from reality. That's what happens a lot around somebody who's dying. People look down at the poor dying person as if they're miserable and wretched and below them, and they need to be protected from everything real and true. And then there are people who take advantage of somebody who's dying to allow the stuck artificial parts of themselves to die along with them. This is one of the great benefits of being around somebody dying. If you choose to merge with the core of that person rather than look at them as a poor, pathetic, helpless, little pitiful thing, if you realize that they're a mighty lion of the soul, and the only thing that's dying is their physical existence, but their deep spirit is getting tremendously freed, that is tremendously freeing for your deep spirit. If you merge with the rays of death, with the vibrations of the dying, to allow the old limited parts of your own nature to die along with that person. And so if you summon up grace and faith while somebody close to you is dying, and let's say that right now somebody close to all of us is dying, and it's Western civilization. The way that Western civilization used to be conducted is dying. Somebody very intimate and close to all of you is dying, and it's your country, it's your culture, it's your civilization. And if you summon, rather than just the freak out, though you can be forgiven for freaking out, it's understandable, but if you summon along with the parts of you that are freaking out, a grace and a faith of the kind you might summon if somebody close to you were actually dying, and maybe even yourself. if you summon the faith and the grace that you might summon even if you were dying, because I'm imagining that you're probably also somebody very close to yourself. And whenever somebody close to yourself is dying, if along with the freak out and the sadness, and oftentimes there is sadness when somebody is dying, of course there's sadness. Oftentimes there's deep grief when somebody is dying. Of course there's deep grief. Many of you may be experiencing deep grief right now. I'm experiencing deep grief, but that's not the only thing I'm experiencing, because the human being is multidimensional rather than monodimensional. You don't only ever feel just one thing. You don't only ever be just one thing. There is no such thing as a Democrat. There is no such thing as a Republican. Like a Republican who reads Republican books and wears Republican clothes and makes love to his wife in a Republican way and drives a Republican car and has Republican dinner and has not a Democrat bone in his body. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a Democrat or a Republican. There's only everything. There's only always. There's only improvising off death and birth, and mixed in with the sorrow, the uncertainty, the freak out, and some of the deep grief is this enormous excitement that the end of pretense is upon us. The pretend world we were all hoodwinked into fitting into is dying. And that's a cause for celebration. Yes, it's sort of an uncertain celebration. It's not a cocky celebration. Wahoo, woo, yay, everything's dying. Whoa, this is fantastic. I'm gonna die, you're gonna die. Earth is dying, everybody's dying. Woohoo, amazing. I'm not talking about just a giddy, sophomoric, superficial celebration. I'm talking about a deep recognition that this life has been killing you. This civilization has been draining the vital resources from the earth. It has been supplanting democratic leaders in country after country in Central America. It has been puffed up on steroids that present the false American dream that we are the chosen few, the mighty white race who is going to push back the barbaric red Indians and tell everyone else what's good and true, as if Christianity were the only religion. That's what's dying. The bullshit is dying. Yes, a lot of good things are dying too. John Prine died. And so many things are passing during this great unmasking, this powerful year. And it behooves you to claim a new narrative, to authorize yourself to write the next scene of your destiny. It takes an evolutionary art to perceive the beauty emerging from the destruction. Because as the great towering ego tower of Western civilization disintegrates, the jailhouse key is going to be found under the rubble of its broken stones. This is the key to get out of an imprisoned existence that only looked normal because billions of people were living that way. But like parents through the ages have loved to tell children through the ages, just because everyone else is doing something doesn't make it right. Just because billions of people were consenting, oh, this is normal, yeah. People in all these other countries are getting raped, tortured, and suppressed. Democracy is getting suppressed, but we're living good here in America. Yeah, right here on Mockingbird Lane. We have no problems here. You know, we have good food, we have good water, we have great TV shows. And so underneath that Disneyland of modern consciousness, the soul was dying. And so there's a sober celebration now rippling through the soul of the species. It's not just a giddy, sophomoric, superficial hallelujah. It's a deep recognition that you are the author of your life. You are the sovereign of your existence. You control your destiny. You have the power to decide whether this is more the end of everything or the beginning of everything. If you make it the beginning of everything, so it is. There is no force authorized to contradict your claiming of your inner truth. If your inner truth becomes, thank the gods that the death existence is ending, that the pretense is ending, that the lies are ending, now I'm invested in what comes next. There is no force that can contradict that. There is no force in heaven or earth that can come between you and the truth of your soul if you claim it. So as coronavirus moves through its stages, as the quarantine moves through its stages, as the ability to believe in the artifice of the past disintegrates, what will you believe in? This is the initiation. As the old dies, as the mask comes off, what identity will you replace it with? What part of yourself will you dig down in to inhabit? Your love, your magic, your life force itself, or the need to go back and talk yourself into fitting in with everybody else who was caught in the masquerade? It's turned midnight in the great costume ball of the ages. The masks are coming off. Okay. Does anybody wish to enter the conversation? And let's especially extend the invitation for those people who rarely speak to speak, because I enjoy hearing from everyone, but a lot of the same people end up talking all the time, and it makes me just wonder what the rest of you have to say.
Okay, I see a few hands have gone up, Mark, and I'm going to go ahead and select a name I don't recognize.
Okay.
So let's see. I'm going to move you over, Joyce. It'll take just a moment, and then we shall be able to see you and hear you. Let's see. Are you able to speak, Joyce?
The thing is red. It's muted. So let me
There we go. There we go. I got it.
Hey, Joyce.
Hi. Thank you so much for letting me ask a question. So, this YouTube video came out yesterday called Out of Shadows. Are you aware of it, and have you?
No, I've heard mention of this, but I haven't looked into it.
Okay, well, people like Christiane Northrup are, posting it, and different people, and so here's my question. And I started watching it, and about 10 minutes into it, I stopped. I had to stop watching it, and I understand about, or I understand about, the unmasking and all of that. I celebrate along with you the death of what is dying and what has not worked for many people for a long time. But here's my dilemma. I've been a student of non-dualism for a long time. And so if I wanna open myself, oh shit. If I wanna open myself to a new narrative, which then includes things like all of the things, the quote unquote conspiracy theories, you know, Pizzagate and all of the stuff that's in all of that. What am I supposed to do with that? Because my spiritual teachings and the teachers, spiritual teachers of non-duality, isn't this just one more thing that I have to work to neutralize inside of myself? Because if this is all, if this is just exchanging one mindset or mental narrative with another mindset and mental narrative, and my inner work, my deep inner spiritual work, has to do with holding the tension between the opposites, holding the tension between the polarity of the dualistic mind, then isn't it all true? And isn't my job to hold the tension between the opposites and not fall to either one, but to hold it somehow and allow my own capacity to not let, you know, it just feels like one more thing that I'm going to have to let go of. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, what do I do with that? Say that everything about that is all true. Then what? What do I do with that?
Where are you, Joyce?
Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you for asking a very important question. Okay, so there is a hazard in looking very deeply into conspiracy theories. And the hazard is that you will become ungrounded. And there is a lot of ungrounded energy surrounding deep conspiracy theories. However, the funny thing about conspiracy theories is that some of them are true.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you avoid the hazard, you gain a deep self-trust. For me, in order to trust myself, I have to not avoid duality and transcend duality, but I have to meet duality from a non-dual part of my own nature.
Mm-hmm.
What that means in my case, and this might be different for some of you, is that when I see something wrong, I call it wrong. And when I see something right, I call it right. I am not afraid of having some things be bad and other things be good. There is a way to evolve a non-duality by so combining with every fiber of your being that you know that something is wrong. And so non-duality has various channels of application, and part of evolving into your most awakened state, it involves the evolution of values. And when your values evolve, you are the one who has absolute jurisdiction over calling something wrong or right. And so duality cannot be rightfully transcended until it's fully inhabited and understood. So the conspiracy theories, some of them are wacky, some of them are ungrounded, some of them are false, some of them are true, some of them are a mixture of true and false. And it takes a spiritual maturity and emotional growth to learn for yourself what seems to be those conspiracies that feel actual and we need to learn from, versus those that are a made up illusion. And one of the ways you gain that spiritual and emotional maturity and a very sharp, clear perception is by asking yourself, who stands to benefit from this story? Who stands to benefit from the story that all vaccines are good, no vaccines are bad, no one has ever been damaged by vaccines, and the medical cartel is absolutely trustworthy, and the federal government and the CDC are absolutely trustworthy? If you ask yourself that question each time you come upon a possible conspiracy, if you ask who stands to benefit from this story being true, you can begin to do the necessary intuitive detective work to decide for yourself those things that you wish to believe in and those things that you wish not to. So, and again,
why do I have to believe in anything? Isn't that just a thought structure and a set of concepts and beliefs that, I mean, I'm rounding third. I'm in my 70s, okay? I've been on a spiritual path for a long, 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 long time, as I know a lot of you have.
Joyce, I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
You keep asking questions, but then going on. And so I'm going to answer the question you asked. Why do I have to believe in everything? And it's hard for me to formulate responses to each of your questions when you keep talking at me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Let me just pause so I can tackle that one, because it's a big one. Why do I have to believe in anything? It's a beautiful question. And the answer is because unless you believe in the truth of your own being, it's hard to strengthen your life, to strengthen your true nature. If this gets into the theoretical spiritual differences between the world's great religions and the cultural ideas. Part of the cultural ideas of various forms of Buddhism has to do with the illusion of the self. And that if we could get past the ego and the illusion of the self, we'll be much better off. And I don't subscribe to that idea. I was taught a different idea. I was taught that the reason why the soul keeps reincarnating over and over again is not to perfect the human nature in order to not have to come back anymore. That idea made no sense to us in our mystery school that I wrote about in my 2012 book. In our mystery school, we studied the opposite idea, that the soul keeps reincarnating because it hasn't yet learned the truth of what it is to be human. That there's a tremendous treasure, there's a tremendous miracle blessing available to the soul who wakes up to fully inhabit your own unique individual nature. And so in my school of thought, we don't put down ego, we don't put down selfhood, we don't put down individuation, we actually worship it, we glorify it. That you came here to be you, that there's something in you that is so worth giving to the rest of the world, and it's your love. That there is this love packed into you from cosmos at the dawn of time, when the spark that became you first sparked off from that cloud of soul sparks, the collective sparks of human souls. One spark sparked off and it became your first human incarnation. and that spark has been sparking each of your lives. You lived and you died, and you went back to spirit, and you came back, and you lived and you died in that life, and you went back to spirit, and you came back. And if you believe in a spark of soul, a spark of cosmos, a core force of love within you, then it becomes your glory and your task to become true to yourself, true to your love, to offer that deep part of you out into the world where it can do some good, and to receive back for that offering the gift of a meaningful experience. I prefer to believe in that story above all others. I prefer to believe that there's an art in being you. And if an artist doesn't believe at all in their capacity to create, we would have no great paintings. We would have no Beatles songs. We would have no Sistine Chapel. We would have no Frida Kahlo. We would have no Barbara Streisand and Paul McCartney. And so what I choose to believe is the story that becoming true to myself is an art form, no less than any art form: sculpting, painting, photography, dance, Shakespeare, literature, that there's an art to being yourself that is equivalent to any of the great works of art through history. And if you believe in that, then you're going to tap deep creative forces inside you that empower you to deal with each new up and down of the karmic wheel, each spin of the karmic merry-go-round, from a very deep creative source in you rather than a superficial source. So that's why I advocate belief.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Joyce. Thank you for the view from Milwaukee.
And Mark, do you want to take another caller or?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I actually just wanted to make an invitation because the hands that went up are folks that have shared recently. So I'm just curious whether you're in the Tribal Drumbeat program or not.
Looks like Melissa lifted her hand too.
Oh, maybe I missed it.
Did you, Melissa, did you raise your hand or? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. So I've been thinking about the Jupiter and Pluto conjunction a lot. Just I have it natally in my own chart, and it's T² my nodes, which feels very similar to what's happening in the evolution of our society. And just a really practical way that I've been thinking about it with my husband. He was mentioning
Melissa,
how
excuse me, Melissa. I'm going to have to stop.
Like
Melissa.
The reason that people aren't voting for Bernie is because they don't realize that they deserve that. And
I'm going to have to stop you because your connection your connection is so bad that we can't understand you. It's cutting out. But I picked up the very beginning of what you said, and I'm just going to take a leap at addressing what I first heard you start to say about the nodes. I think you were saying that in your own birth chart, Jupiter is square your north and south nodes or something similar to that. And I'm going to pick up that part of it and run with it, since I have no idea what the rest of it was that you tried to say. And I'm going to say that that there is a moment here which is has the equal capacity to pull each of us backward or forward. And that's what's going on when a planet squares your nodes. It's that and I have this in my birth chart. Mars squares my north and south node, my past and my future. And so it means that every time I activate my power, I equally light up my past as my future. I can't just go in one direction. It's a very philosophical Mars that I have. I have a very philosophical sexuality, power, drive, force, assertiveness. And that's what's happening all over the world now here. There is a part of the human species that cannot believe that we're ever going to outgrow the shadow of the species. There is a part of human beings that cannot believe we could do away with rape and war and incest. There is a part of the human species that feels like there's always been war, there's always been incest, there's always been rape, there always will be war, there always will be rape, there always will be incest. And that shadow of our species is the self-destructive component in human beings. The human race has a strong streak of self-destruction. And the human race has a powerful longing to evolve and outgrow our shadow. Inside every individual, those two forces are vying for control. The part of you that just cannot believe that humanity is ever going to grow up, wake up. Stop acting like a spoiled adolescent brat, acting out over and over again to see if there's any higher authority to stop its acting out. And there is a part of each of us that absolutely feels the truth of how every human being has the capacity to outgrow their limitation. And so we are unlimiting the story of the species. We are raising the ceiling and we are lowering the dungeon. It's not one or the other, it's both. So the dungeon is getting lowered of how low the species can sink into delusion. You know, most of our national politicians are delusional. I would say psychopathic. And at the same time, great pockets of awakening are spreading from person to person to person all around the planet. They're also spreading from animals to people. Animals are teaching people how to wake up now. There's been more incredible memes in recent years of animals interacting with animals that they're supposed to be fighting with, animals acting with humans. A female scuba diver making friends with a moray eel over years and years and years. The eel wraps itself around her body and they dance together. People and sharks, human beings untangle birds that got caught in nets, untangling sharks that got caught in nets. So animals are teaching human beings how to be human right now because we've forgotten. And people are teaching people, children are teaching adults. Earth is talking. And so to respond to the first thing you mentioned, Melissa, about when a planet squares the nodes, that's what's happening symbolically for everyone now all over the world. So thank you for bringing
You hear
that
me
in.
now?
Only, no, it's
No,
still,
okay.
still
Switch
messed up.
devices. No, okay.
Yeah, sorry. If you want to chat something in, maybe Marcella could read it to us, but let's also move on and see if somebody else wants to speak. Marcel.
Okay, we just have like 4 minutes.
Oh, we got 4 minutes. All right, then I'll take over.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been given the 4-minute warning by my local authority, and I'm a good follower of authority. So instead of contradicting my local authority, I'm going to dwell in her shadow and say that with the 4-minute warning, I better step up to the plate and be the Mark Borax that likes to have things to say to others.
Yes, thank you for letting me dominate you today. I appreciate it.
Yes, don't worry, there'll be payback. And so what is this unmasking designed to produce in the most optimal of destiny scenarios? In the most optimal of destiny scenarios, the coronavirus and political madness can produce a willingness of masses of individuals to claim their true life. This is what's being offered. Even though it's couched in a viral epidemic, even though it's couched in a stolen US national election, even though it's couched in highly suspect vaccine movements, nevertheless, Spirit is summoning you to claim your true life, claim your true nature, be the one your soul signed up to be, to stop messing around with pretenders to the throne, to stop making love to lesser deities than the muse of your own existence, to find a way to show up that honors what you know to be true in your heart of hearts. This is the optimal destiny scenario of what can emerge from this current crisis period. It's your true nature. It's your true life, because most people live in as if existence, living as if life was something that they just have to get through until something better comes along. This is the false and superficial side of the world's great religions. Many, but not all of the world's great religions break down to life is something you have to get through until something better comes along. And New Age spirituality breaks down to life is something you have to get through till something better comes along. The optimal scenario that can emerge from this current period that we're living through now is your true life, your real life. This is your life. There is no maybe, there is no tomorrow. There's just you, there's just now, and you are everything, and everything is you. That has been the CWR Live for Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, the great unmasking of the trance of normalcy, the Jupiter conjunct Pluto conjunction that's going on all year. This is soul level astrologer Mark Borax signing off from Putney Mountain. Thank you all for joining me, and I send you tremendous blessings to be yourself and to trust yourself and to follow the muse.
Lord of the Starfield, Ancient of Days, Universe Maker, here's a song in your praise. Wings of the
Аз като казах в началото, всъщност аз доста преди да дойде вече.